Welcome, everyone. I am back. For those of you that heard my little primer a couple of days ago, which was really more of a test, now we're going to do a deeper dive into that subject. And I think we might be able to have audience interaction. Now, I'm still new on StreamYard, trying to figure it all out, how it plays into all the live platforms, but I'm really, really excited about it. And I'm sure as I do more of them, and I hope to do at least one every week, not just me solo, but also having amazing guests on. This is really an exciting time. So, welcome everyone. I'm Angelo Robles. Many of you know me as being the founder and CEO of Family Office Association for many, many, many years. I'm still the founder, but I sold my final positions in FOA to a wonderful group. I'm sure they're going to do an amazing job, and I wish nothing but the new ownership and management team at FOA nothing but the best. But I am onward to many new things. And I may weave some of that in, but I don't want to make it an infomercial. I want to make it educational from my knowledge of near 20 years in the community, my travels around the world, meeting with billionaires and families, and being a sponge and hopefully learning. So, one thing that I realized mainly during COVID was I had an extremely prominent, significant on the closer side to 1 than 50 in the Forbes 400 that reached out to me kind of with a little bit of an assignment. And I've always been someone who worries about what could go wrong. And that basically led me to even what I'm going to be talking about in a mini way now, the velocity of wealth destruction, family continuity in unprecedented times. I'd call it the modern moat around the castle. Being wrong now has never been more costly. And in many ways, our world is far more dangerous than it might have been when literally having the castle with the moat and knowing the royals or being a royal was really all the protection that you needed. It's gotten way more complicated now for a variety of reasons, and we're going to discuss some of them. And again, I haven't always been great at this, but I hope to make this interactive. I do have an associate with me today that if I can't see questions coming in, which it looks like I may not be able to, maybe there's something here I could enable comments. Oh, well, but he may be able to read some of them out. So we're going to do the best we could. First of all, I think the importance here is understanding history. And I mentioned this a couple of days ago. 1620s, the English Reformation, the French Revolution, the Russian Revolution. What happened during those and others? I just named three. There's more. Good. It looks like some things may be coming in. So I think I could be able to read some questions. So please interact. What happened was the super rich were largely taken out. I could use a little bit of a harsher word, but I'm going to be a little bit cordial here on these platforms, especially Twitch, where they're so careful. Unless you were a true power that be back in the day, and that would probably be more of a royal, then you're probably always going to be sort of safe. Now you're going to say, well, those things can't happen today. Maybe not necessarily how that happened, but what happens with history? Does it repeat itself, and is the world different now? It may not repeat itself, but it does rhyme. And lots of things, maybe more things now could go wrong than ever before. So you have the issue, what I would call of there is a wealth gap and there is a bit of a challenge here. And I admit I don't have all the solutions for it. The super rich do many things that could be great. They build businesses, they employ people, they support communities, they pay taxes, I think. Of course they do. But yeah, there's going to be some that are amazing people and philanthropists, most that are pretty good and want to do the right thing. And like any lot in life, no matter who, there's probably going to be a percentage that are kind of really bad. But we seem to be having a culture here in this country and in the West where there's almost a backlash against being successful, where in other parts of the world, I would say Asia and other parts, it's like tremendously respected. You built a business, you took the risk. You're, again, supporting employees in the community and communities and all that. But we seem to be in trying times now. What I would say, there's a lot of resentfuls, and they definitely have the masses, meaning there's more have-nots haves than there are haves. Their vote counts every bit the same. So in theory, their political influence, especially as that grows over time and arguably that side appears to be kind of winning out, is going to be stressful in terms of on the system. Entrepreneurship, the spirit of entrepreneurship, kind of what America, the backbone of America, a little bit cultural, I could argue, going back to the Vikings, going back to the Dutch, going back to the English and Scottish, where the American freedom was really, really important to Americans. Really, really important. And is that the same now, a couple of hundred years in? It's more complicated. We have various cultures that are aspect here in America, and maybe that perspective of how it used to be, freedom first and fight for that freedom, I don't know if it's the same anymore. So I think the super rich could be impactful through their foundations and through their influence, but I also agree that we do need to be careful with that. So there's a little bit of a fine line there. If I had to throw something out to you as an audience, and again, I'm going to maybe give a little bit of context as well. I've been in the family office community a long time. I know well over 100 billionaires and literally thousands of family offices, and I travel the world. I come from nothing. I'm more of a student than I am any sort of teacher. But I'd like to hope that I'm not Mr. Boring, or at least not anymore. This has become a very vanilla community. Don't rock the boat. Shh, be careful, kind of be down the middle. I think it's more complicated than that. And I do think it's important to talk about geopolitics and issues that are happening now that can get uncomfortable. Is my opinion always going to be right? Of course not. I'm going to be wrong a lot. But I think it's important to have open and honest debate. We appear to be at a point now in the country where that's almost frowned upon. It's kind of cancel culture. I would say it's gotten a little better recently, but to me, it's not acceptable. Again, just because it's a little better. So that brings up a very big point that's going to be a little controversial for some of you. In the US, we are in a cold civil war now. This is the most bifurcation in our country that we've had, I'm going to say, since the Civil War. So the question is, what's going to happen? Is it going to get better? Is it going to get worse? Is it going to stay stable? And could it turn hot? And hot means what you know it means. It means really, really bad. We have upcoming elections coming up a little over a year from now. Oh, next year will be, I'll have a lot of things to talk about on my lives, on my podcast. And by the way, if you don't, please do subscribe to my @Family Office channel on YouTube and my new Family Office TV channel on YouTube. Parts of that in time will be subscription service, but for now, I'm putting up some, I think, amazing multi-hour discussions that are very deep on economics, investing, and geopolitics, and tying it all together. And I am pushing the boundaries for what many of you are used to in the family office world. So one other problem that I'll just simply throw out there is, what is our deficit here in the US? It's growing all the time. It's $31 trillion, not even factoring in unfunded pension liabilities, let alone things like derivative markets and things that we, as Warren Buffett says, like missiles of weapons, financial weapons of mass destruction. So inevitably, whether that's in 3 years or 50 years, probably closer to 3, but I don't think it's going to be much longer. What happens when the dollar is no longer the reserve currency? What happens to all that debt and all those treasuries? What potentially happens in so many different ways with hyperinflation? I mean, I could go on and on. Is the biggest threat in the world? Maybe it's not China. Maybe simply it's our massive amount of debt that we have here in the US. What would happen to US bond prices in a crash? Inevitably, that would instantly be impactful globally. What would happen if we simply just don't pay? And it doesn't look good. How can we get out of this with what, hyperinflation? And that's not going to cause mass riots and challenges. And again, we got an election coming up next year that I don't know if there is any good solution. I mean, I hear various politicians, and we're going to get way more into this later this year and next year. And I think I'm going to get some of them on. So I look really, really forward to that. So it's important to remember, Okay, let's even talk about Kissinger visiting China. Like, why? Is that to talk about them stopping the BRICS and how the BRICS are going to be using some level of commodities to have it not be a fiat currency, but backed by something actual? And is that going to be a major threat to the US dollar losing its reserve currency status even sooner? Or did he go there to kind of, and other people have commented on this, from a little bit of a, gauging things out from a war perspective and what that could look like? Let me throw other things out there. Do you agree that we're living in a more lawless society than ever before? I mean, I went to LA 3 times this year, multiple times, and I'm more of a West Hollywood guy, but I go into Beverly Hills here and there. I just kept on hearing about the restaurants and stores during the day get people that will just come in with masks and guns and rob people right there. That's never happened before. At least I never heard about it. But of course, since COVID and a lot of the challenges that we've had and the bifurcations, that's gotten worse and worse. Oh, what else could I talk about? FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried. Lots of interesting things there. I think of the protests that happened more so here in 2020. What's kind of behind that and what happened in France recently? And I'm not saying there's not injustices. There are. I'm half Latino, so half minority heritage. I get it. But again, I do look at things from that perspective, and it does kind of make me scratch my head. Politics, which I briefly hinted at, but what's going to happen one day, if you just look at the math and the numbers, what happens one day, and my fellow half, but my half Latino heritage is the same as AOC. AOC, I got to give her credit. I think she's smart. I think she's great at marketing, but she scares the hell out of me. So is it possible one day, and others have spoken about this, taxing unrealized capital gains? And that would, I guess that would definitely help to make an impact, I guess, on the deficit. But that would, again, what happens to the super rich during trying times when the resentfuls come, quote unquote, into power? There's kidnap threats from what the billionaires tell me than ever before. Some of them don't even trust their personal security. And maybe I should talk about this kind of stuff on Rumble and not other platforms. Someone who might have worked for a 3-letter agency, their allegiance and their pensions are tied into government and support of the government. So I do think there is reasons to question. It's going up Thursday, I think, my interview with former Green Beret and investment banker, Ian Burlingame. It was like 2.5 hours. It was really intense. I mean, honestly, you have to listen to that. No one else in the family office world is talking about these issues. And I promise I'm going to tie this in even more so to family offices. But I think I needed to build a little bit of a story. So what I did for that family that I referenced earlier is I effectively built a sovereign risk assessment, if you want to give it a clickbaity title, disaster prep for the super rich or for billionaires. It's up to 300 slides now. Now, what really makes it come to life is me and a little bit of my dream team of thought leaders, including the Green Beret and others, former government officials, and really deep thinkers and thought leaders around the world. Don't be so US-centric in your mindset. That has to change with a lot of you as Americans. And I'm Mr. Captain America. Look at my post for Memorial Day. Look at what I talk about from a libertarian perspective. Look at my new residence upcoming and where my businesses are in Wyoming. I am all for that. You should be very pro-American. Now, again, we could save a little bit of that talk for a little bit of a different time. How about cyber attack? How about extortions to family via cyber or the employees that work in their family office? And we have a war going on now, and that's been spoken about in some of my geopolitical discussions. Jacob Shapiro's coming up live next week. So he has a different political perspective than mine, and that's good. We could have an honest discussion, a little bit of a debate. Maybe he'll kick my ass. He probably will. But again, these are the things that used to happen in this country and don't happen anymore because people only want to have guests that basically concur with them. If you have people that you think would be incredible, especially former military and geopolitical thinkers and economists that even have a very different perspective than mine, bring them on, introduce them to me. I'm more than happy to do an interview with them. but I was getting to war. So I'm not going to go too deep into Russia to Ukraine, but I will say Russia has a lot of nukes. They have hypersonic missiles that everyone off the record tells me we don't have a great solution for that. It takes upwards of 400 of those, and they have way more to literally destroy the world. It could take one, God forbid, going off in a major city here to basically change the world as we know it forever, let alone 400. We do not have a great solution for that. Does the US have the strongest military? In some ways, yes. And in some ways, that is very debatable. Obviously, the players are China, the US, and yes, Russia. Don't believe perfectly what you hear in the Western media. Believe some of it, I guess. And really, that's what I learned from billionaires. Think for your damn self. That's what Michael Saylor told me, what he learned at MIT. I can't mention some others, but I could mention Michael. Think for yourself. They have advantages that we don't have. And I could make the argument, and I asked Ian Burlingame this question, and I am not going to answer it. You're going to have to listen to that interview. Is the US military too woke to really win a war? It's hard for me to imagine that, because don't we have the best and this and that, and we have oceans on both sides and friendly neighbors? Oh, don't worry. We have our government, our dollar, and we have protection from contract law. Yeah, we get a weak military. Other countries don't care less about our rules and regulations. They will absolutely take advantage of us and kick our butt. It is the capacity of threat and violence that keeps everything, quote unquote, intact. Never, never forget that. So again, going back to, you all need to build a moat around the castle. Now, here are some of the questions that you all should be asking. So first of all, this is going to be 30, 40 minutes today. It's a little bit of a light primer. No, I'm not going to give away my masterclass, which is, many, many, many hours of me and others really walking through the problem and the solution. And it's way more than get multiple passports. That's a little bit of a part of it, but where? And that changes all the time. It's way more than own art in Freeport zones in Switzerland and Singapore, than own gold and own Bitcoin. Real estate, you don't think titles could be changed? I spoke to families in the Middle East and in Europe. All that could be manipulated, especially eventually when it arguably could be worse when it goes on some form of blockchain. And I'm kind of a Web3 and crypto kind of guy. So there are things that could really, really go wrong. And as the banking crisis, what happens when one day we have a central bank digital currency that becomes programmable money? And now you don't spend it enough, it's frozen, or interest rates go up. You have zero privacy, zero. And they may say, well, per climate change, you're eating too much meat. You're only allowed to buy 2 pounds a month, which is why, arguably, owning farms. But what could happen with that? Eminent domain, emergency orders from the government. They're just take it from you. I mean, I think they'll give you some money for it, but who knows? It could be a national emergency. So the solutions are not easy. And I'm going to tell you flat out, the principals are scared to death of the things when they hear me talk. The executives and the advisors, I just don't think they want to talk about these issues. One, honestly, they're partially ignorant. They don't know. And they're a gatekeeper. A gatekeeper cares about that they're get their head petted. They're loved by their quote unquote master. And that's the wrong attitude. You want to be incredibly competent. You want to identify your blind spots, and you want to identify ego that gets in the way. And we all have some combination of all that. You want to always learn and adapt and uptick your competency, work on your blind spots, fill in around them, and understand that we all have ego because we probably had some level of successes in what we do. You're human. I get it. But these are the issues, which is why I also want to work with those that want to be a family office executive, those that are a family office executive and want to be great. And I talk about that all the time, reimagining the family office where you're not just mediocre. Most family offices, I know it's not mathematically accurate, they're like very average, kind of probably pretty bad. If I compare the 12th player on the bench of an NBA team to other 12 players, okay, but what happens when I compare them to LeBron James? They don't look so good. So what I want to do is, how do you do benchmarking and best practices with 20 or 30 LeBron Jameses of the family office world? You want to be the weak one in the room, because that means you're forced to get better. This is not the discussion for hiring in the family office for compensation. We all know the families can be too frugal, lots of challenges there, and the buck stops with them. They allow this to happen. So what I do is, no one tells billionaires the truth. Sometimes you just got to tell them, hey, your idea, it's stupid. But executives and those around them, because they're dependent on that principle, don't tell them the truth. So what I like to do is I go into principals and those in the family office that are more open-minded, and we do an assessment. And this is part of the work that I do now in my organizations that I've built, which I'll get to a little bit towards the end. This is really, really important. Am I the only one? Of course not. But I don't think there's a lot that are being very, very truthful with families. So US families, you better wake up. You better become more global. There's lots of things that could go wrong. And if you care about, and maybe you don't, but if you care about continuity in your family, which is more than just continuing to grow your wealth, that's a part of it, preserve it, have offshore trust foundations and assets, all things that I could work with families, private trust companies, arguably onshore and offshore, how to structure them, assets. I gave some hints already, but it is complicated. So here's what you have to think about. Is it a small risk of happening? The things I'm speaking about before COVID might have been under 1%. Now there's no question they are well above 1%. I don't know, 5, 10, 20%, maybe more, that some of this could happen. Now, here's the question you have to ask. If they happen and things get bad and assets get frozen or liquidated or lots of things that could go wrong, what's the consequences? The consequences are dire. So how could you diversify and have less risk by understanding some of the issues that are happening? Is it worth putting some time and effort and money? I always talk about, and I dabble a little bit in philosophy and stuff like that. There's really only two things that you kind of have in some ways. You have time and you have energy. And money, to a degree, is how we kind of value that. So again, your time could be limited depending on your age and what else you could be doing that is going to be more viable to your successes, or what you want to do, built over building companies and things like that. But think about it that way. Time and energy is going to be a very, very, very important perspective. So here's some questions that I've been asking the economists and geopolitic thought leaders. I'm not going to go through all of them. It'll be boring, but I'll mention some. The transition from a unipolar to a multipolar world order is realigning the geopolitical chessboard that has largely remained unchanged since Bretton Woods. That was like 80 years ago. That's forever ago. The US, the UK, and the EU inability to prevent global realignment, NATO and related intelligence and military capabilities no longer able to dominate their counterparts around the world. And yeah, you could bet on it that they've done that, three-letter agencies, and God forbid there's a threat to the dollar, which maybe as Americans we should be happy about it. They squash that in any way possible. And that is beginning to get harder and harder. Whew. In a world that has decided the Eurodollar system is over, there's immense capacity to make that a reality that there may not have been just a couple of years ago, particularly as they make up more than 50% of the global economy, meaning, I guess, the non-West, and probably 100% of its growth. And as their currencies are backed by real tangible assets and first-order revenues. I do not mean to be an alarmist. I do think you should be positive. I just think you should realize there's chances that things could go wrong. You are probably to some degree undereducated in these areas, and me and others could help you. Some of it is simply free content that I'm doing now that's up on my @Family Office and Family Office TV YouTube platform, probably soon to more forcefully add Twitch and Rumble. And I could talk about various things that may be a little different, especially in Rumble. That's a completely open and uncensored platform, at least for now. Whew, there's lots going on out there. Educate yourself. If you're working in a family office and want to be a top 1%, want to be special, not just average or good or even very good, and you want to get paid properly for that, I totally agree. I'll go to bat to you with the family. You should be paid lots of money if you're doing a great job because you're among the top, whatever, 100 people at what you do. And you probably have some of the core competencies in your skill set. Think of the other things about being more of a critical thinker, having more polymath and diverse skill sets. And here's where I could really help instantly by working with what I do. Your global network really, like, that will instantly, boom, be enhanced right there. You'll have resources that simply are at your fingertips that you didn't even think you had. And often you're already in a situation where you probably have less resources than you had at your whatever big legal firm, accounting firm, or investment company in the past. That's a challenge of these families. But yes, I agree. You need to get compensated properly. And the families have not treated many of you right from that perspective, and shame on them. Now, I can make the argument some of you do not deserve to be in the family office world. You're resting on your laurels. You're using the family office community as the final stages of your career. And when I talk to other consultants, this constantly comes up. They see it too. I'm just a little more vocal about it. So I'm going to take a look. And again, I'm a little bit new to this, and take a look at some of the comments that may be coming in to see if there's something that I more specifically could answer. And I do have my associate here, Britt. Britt, are you seeing any more specific questions on the LinkedIn side or anything? So on that note, we're about 30 minutes in. I wanted to make this somewhat concise. Some of you were asking, what I am up to now, which I did share on a LinkedIn post and Facebook. I have not done a formal press release yet. But so one, again, I loved what I accomplished with amazing people around me at FOA. My first president, Joe Riley, my second president, Ryan Anson. FOA became something special. Every bit, they were equally as important, if not in some ways more important than I was. So I appreciate them, anyone that was supportive of FOA, and those thought leaders and amazing speakers that I had over the years, Steve Cohen, Ray Dalio, General Wesley Clark, Peter Thiel, many of them relatively early in FOA that had no idea who I was, but believed that I was dedicated to the community and maybe building something special with my team. And I do appreciate them. So, have I made mistakes? Of course. And those are lessons learned moving forward. I have risen. I have to some degree stumbled, and hopefully I'll rise even better than ever before. And I look forward to being of value and a servant to the community. And that really is what I look at myself as. So I formed, I guess you could say, a holding company in my beloved state of Wyoming. And I have 3 entities, technically 1 or 2 more, but I'm going to keep them a little bit more low-key and mysterious for a couple of more months. But my core 3 are SFO, for single family office continuity. That is a more intimate version of what I built at FOA. I want to have only 15 founding members this year, either a direct family or a family office, no one else. And I never want to take any sponsor revenue, paid speaker revenue, or have corporate partners. I'm sorry. You're either a direct principal, per my discretion, or an executive in a family office. That's it. You get me, kind of 24/7. My content, my proprietary content, my content that becomes more open, but you get it at the moment, not waiting 2 weeks, a month, 2 months, or sometimes a year. And you get the community of your peers in a very, very safe environment, to some degree global, because I am very active, especially in Europe. I also, as I noted, in conjunction with my @family office on YouTube, which is maybe the largest of the family office platforms with about 11,000 subscribers, with some great interviews on there and probably some that aren't so good. I should probably clean it up a little bit. Years ago, I created familyoffice.tv, but I just didn't do anything with it. And now I'm excited to give back to the community and have more diverse programming on that is not just investing in economics, but some geopolitical, some legal, tax, and foundation. I got a great guest, the iconic Jamie McLaughlin himself, coming up this Thursday. And we're going to talk about how SFOs are considering converting into an MFO. And that could be viable for the family to offset cost and be profitable and be incredibly pretty amazing for the SFO executives and the teams that are built. If they do it right, and that is the question. My interview with Jay Hughes, which was, I believe, his longest digital interview, an hour and 37 minutes, is up there now. And again, that's free. You could go to Family Office TV on YouTube and you'll find it and enjoy it. My Adam Robinson, who's one of the most amazing critical thinkers I've ever come across, one of my most popular speakers live of all time, and a frequent guest of Tim Ferriss. And that's what made Adam very popular. He just went up today on my Family Office TV platform. So, and that is something I'll probably convert into somewhat of a very modest subscription service, but we'll see how that plays out in the coming weeks to months. The third leg of the stool is Billionaire Mastermind. Do you want to understand my decades of research on the super rich, me staying over at their homes, traveling to LATAM, to Europe, all across the US, getting to know them and their spouses and their children, and with some of them going through 200 plus questions in a questionnaire that get very deep and very personal, for me to provide information on their mindset and traits to bring them in as unique speakers into this billionaire mastermind, which we've been getting inquiries from people. And I know I'm playing in a special community and I'm not at that level myself. One day I hope to be, but centimillionaires that want to be a billionaire, not necessarily because of ego. Maybe that does play a little bit into it, because they're very, very competitive. They're really, really good at building companies and making money. And they may have enough money for themselves or their families, but they want to also give back because they believe their foundations and what they do could do a better job of it, supporting employment and foundation issues and philanthropic initiatives than what many governments and others could do. You could argue debatable, and I'm willing to have that discussion, but I'm really excited about those three companies. Any of you could reach out to me anytime with the DM, with the direct reach out. I'm not too happy with my angelorobles.com. That's my overall branded website now. Give it 3 more weeks. Let's call it August 15th, and it will have everything on it. Updated, looking way better than it does now, and having the opportunity to interact and be a part of any of those three, or the private consulting that I do, either to institutions, to family office executives, or to families. So enough about that. More to come. You all know how to reach me. I hope you enjoyed my little diatribe about some of the issues that I think we're in kind of unprecedented times now, and I want you to think differently. Again, I know you're not hearing about this stuff in the family office world because we're so careful at the conferences not to offend either side and be very careful and be vanilla. Don't have a beard, shave and be Mr. Clean Cut. Like I'm past that stage. I'm at an opportunity now where I love what I do. My passion has been lit like never before. Did I get a little bit lackadaisical or rested on laurels too much? I did. I've made mistakes. Those are on me. They're all on me. The buck stops with me. But I have this amazing opportunity with those that believe and support in me to hopefully do things better than I've ever done before. But I can only do it with all of you supporting and being a part of what I'm doing. I do appreciate all of you. Now that I sold my position officially and I'm more public and out there with my new initiatives, even though it is the summer, I do look forward to you all hearing more from me, and you can reach out anytime. I got lots of subjects to cover, anything and everything related to family offices and around it, geopolitical investing, tax and legal issues, politics, all of that. You're going to hear it. You may disagree with it. That's okay. Share your disagreement with me. I want to hear the other side. I promise I do. I want to hear the other side, and I want to interview it, and I want to have open and honest discussions. I appreciate all of you. Thank you so much for your time, and look forward to our follow-up. Have a wonderful summer. If you don't see me prior to the end, enjoy. Thank you.